The Grand Hall of Zero's Nine shimmered with lights from 100 alien banners, each carrying the pride of empires that had ruled the stars for centuries. Delegates filled the chamber, their strange eyes and scaled faces turning toward the newest arrival, a single human standing at the edge of the council floor. His name was Captain Elias Ward, chosen by Earth to represent humanity's voice for the first time in galactic history. To most, he looked unremarkable. No claws, no armor, no enhanced body frame, just a man in a simple suit with steady eyes. Yet his very presence made whispers ripple through the crowd. The older races scoffed, some amused that a species so young dared step into a hall where ancient powers argued over borders and trade. Others leaned forward, curious, for they had heard rumors about humanity's strange resilience. The air felt tense, as though the gathering was less about peace and more about testing the courage of the newcomer. Elias stood calm, scanning the chamber without fear, and in that silence, the galaxy misjudged him. They thought they were looking at prey that had wandered into a den of predators. What they didn't know was that the predator had just arrived. As the council debates dragged on, a group of alien dignitaries exchanged glances and smirks, deciding it was time to test the human. They claimed it was a traditional game, a harmless display of reflex and honor, but everyone in the chamber knew it was meant to humiliate. A towering guard stepped forward, carrying a ceremonial blade, its edge glinting under the lights. Without warning, he tossed it high into the air, letting it spin down toward Elias in a deadly arc. The motion drew gasps from the delegates, for the blade was sharp enough to cut through armor, and no one believed a fragile human could react in time. For a heartbeat, the chamber expected panic, maybe a scream or a clumsy dodge. But Elias did not flinch. His eyes followed the weapon with a calm intensity, his body still as stone until the last instant. Then, faster than anyone thought possible, his hand shot upward and closed around the hilt, stopping the blade mid-fall. The sound of metal against his palm echoed like thunder in the silence that followed. He lowered the weapon slowly and placed it back into the guard's hand without a word. What was meant as mockery had become a warning. The chamber fell into a silence so sharp it seemed to cut through the air itself, and for several long moments no one dared to move. The knife had been caught, not stumbled upon, not fumbled, but seized with the precision of a predator who had done it 1,000 times before. The guard who had thrown it blinked in disbelief, his scaled fingers twitching as though the weapon now burned in his palm. Around him, murmurs began to rise like a growing storm. Some whispered that it was luck, others muttered that perhaps the knife had been slowed by hidden technology, but those closest to the fall had seen the truth: the human's hand had moved faster than their eyes could follow. Delegates from the Zarn coalition leaned back uneasily, recalling reports of humans surviving Deathworld storms that killed stronger species. The Valen envoys, who prided themselves on speed, exchanged worried glances, suddenly questioning their place in this hall. Elias himself gave no smile, no boast, no display of triumph. He simply stood tall, his expression calm, as if catching a falling blade was nothing extraordinary. And that calmness was what unsettled them most. To flinch would have been natural, to boast would have been expected, but this silence spoke of control, discipline, and instincts honed by a world where hesitation meant death. For the first time, many in that room began to wonder if humanity's true strength was not in their ships or weapons, but in the strange way they carried danger like an old companion. The realization spread slowly, but once it took root, it could not be ignored. Perhaps the galaxy had not invited prey into the council today. Perhaps, without realizing it, they had opened the door to another predator. In the hours after the trial, the council chamber buzzed with private conversations and hurried translations carried through hidden channels. Delegates who had come to mock the human now spoke in low voices, their laughter gone, replaced by unease that spread like cracks in stone. In a quiet corner of the station, Counselor Rava of the Syrinx Dominion met with her peers, her usually confident tone carrying an edge of worry. She reminded them that the knife test had not been about strength or technology, but instinct, something that could not be built in factories or bought with wealth. If humans could react with such calm precision in a moment of danger, what would they be capable of when real threats came? her words unsettled even the proudest among them. The Kelvari, a species who claimed mastery of speed, muttered that humans had no right to possess such reflexes. The Valens whispered that Earth's history of storms, wars, and predators had shaped a creature that did not panic but adapted, and that made them dangerous in ways no one had foreseen. Elias himself, unaware of the storm he had stirred, walked the halls with measured steps, speaking politely to those who dared approach. Yet every bow of his head, every steady glance, only deepened the feeling that humans were not here as students of the galaxy, but as a force that might one day guide or even command it. The warning spread quickly. If one man could turn mockery into silence with a single motion, then what would an army of such beings look like? The answer was one none of them wished to imagine, but all of them were beginning to fear. By the time the council adjourned, the memory of the knife had already taken root in every corner of the station. Delegates who had arrived confident in their dominance now left with eyes filled with unease, each one carrying the same image: the human hand, moving faster than thought, closing around a weapon meant to shame him. It was not the act alone that haunted them, but the simplicity of it. There had been no strain, no sign of desperation, only calm acceptance, as if danger was nothing new to this species. Stories spread quickly through the mess halls, the docking bays, and the hidden networks of spies. Humanity had shown its nature without firing a shot or raising a voice. Soldiers whispered that if one human could do this in peace, what would they do in war? Diplomats quietly redrafted their agreements, weighing the cost of underestimating a people who treated fear like an old companion. Some even began to fear that inviting humanity into the council was not the birth of a weak ally, but the arrival of a rival power that could not be measured by the usual scales of empire. Elias returned to his quarters in silence, never once speaking of what he had done, but his calm expression carried a message far louder than words. The galaxy had always believed humans were too young, too fragile to matter among ancient civilizations. Now, with one quiet act, that belief was shattered. The realization spread like wildfire. Earth had not sent prey to the council. It had sent a predator in plain clothes, and though it had only caught a knife today, the galaxy understood then, perhaps too late, that trouble had already arrived.